haven't heard much about this book, but what I did hear was so compelling that I had to add it to my TBR. His stories are so comforting and beautiful. Don't get me wrong, they will break your heart so badly, at least some of them, but the story will also put your heart back together and mend it and leave you feeling happy and just excited about life. The kind of book that you pick up if you just want cozy, happy vibes. And she's coming out with another book called she has a way of writing that is just so freaking addictive, and in the moment you really cannot pull your eyes away from the story, from the book. But then for me personally, afterwards I feel like perhaps I wasted my time reading this story, because what did I really gain from it? Nothing. Hello and welcome back to my channel. Now I want to create a TBR of 25 books that have been published this year. Why 25, you ask? Because it was a trending title at the beginning of the year. It's months later, but I still wanted to create my own video of 25 books that I want to read in 2025. And I suppose at the end of this year, or maybe the beginning of next year, I can look back and see, did I really read any of these and what did I think about them? So in this video, I will be sharing books that have already been published this year, or they will be published sometime this year. Guys, I'm so excited about this list. I found some books that I think are very exciting, and I hope they live up to the amazing book summaries that I found online. Book 1 is One Day Everyone Will Have Always Been Against This by Omar El Akad. I haven't heard much about this book, but what I did hear was so compelling that I had to add it to my TBR. This book first caught my attention because of a tweet that the author put out on October 25th, 2023, and I think that was 3 weeks after the bombing of Gaza. The author Omar El Akad put out this tweet: "One day when it's safe, when there's no personal downside to calling a thing what it is, when it's too late to hold anyone accountable, everyone will have always been against this." That particular tweet was apparently viewed 10 million times, according to this article that I found on the Penguin Random House website. I think it generated a lot of buzz because it's a powerful statement, and its power lies in the truth that it reveals. When we look at certain world events like the Holocaust, the genocide in Uganda, the ongoing conflict in Congo, slavery and colonization, what's been happening between Israel and Palestine, when all these events are viewed from a historical lens, we all unanimously agree that they were wrong and never should have happened. But as they are happening, they are able to go on for such a long time, and we have to wonder why, as humans, these things keep happening, despite the fact that when we look back, we always say these things are wrong and the senseless killing of people is never the answer to anything. It's a very interesting premise and a very huge undertaking for the author to try and tackle this particular theme, and I'm so curious to see how he goes about it and the underlying message that he has for his readers. Next is The Dream Hotel by Laila Lalami. This is a dystopian novel whose backdrop is set against a futuristic world where data collection is so advanced that even dreams are being monitored. And sure, if you think that sounds a bit far-fetched, it does. I thought it sounded far-fetched when I first came across this book, but then the more I thought about it, the more I realized, maybe it's not as far-fetched as we think, because when you think about it, in today's world, your data is always being collected. When you go to a website and you allow them to have all the cookies, you're basically giving them access and permission to track you. And we know they say the data is so that they know how to better catalog and present their services to you according to what they decipher are your needs. But at the same time, we also know data is always being sold, and we don't know to who, we don't know to what is being done with it. So the story here is pulling from things that are happening, they have been happening for a very long time, and they only seem to be expanding in terms of how your data is collected and how it's used to show you ads and whatever else. So The Dream Hotel is not a far-fetched idea. My Friends by Fredrick Backman. Fredrick Backman is like my comfort author. His stories are so comforting and beautiful. Don't get me wrong, they will break your heart so badly, at least some of them, but the story will also put your heart back together and mend it and leave you feeling happy and just excited about life. Fredrick Backman is an author I will read anything he publishes, and I think I'm gonna slowly just read everything he's ever published. He just has a way of creating characters that are so whole and fully fleshed out, and then depicting something about the human condition that is just so touching and beautiful. So far I've read 2 books from this author, and the first one is A Man Called Ovi. I think that's one of his most popular books. And the second one is And Every Day the Way Home Gets Longer and Longer and Longer. Both of these will break your heart, but they will slowly put it back together and mend it and leave you happy about life, leave you wanting to appreciate every single moment and recognize how every single moment is worth cherishing. If I could describe this author in one sentence, it will be that his writing and the stories that he tells are just so beautiful and so touching. I think aside from R F Kuang, he's another author that I would pick up anything that he publishes. Goddess Complex by Sanjenna Sathian. This is an exploration into the predetermined markers of life that we have set for ourselves as a society. The overall process or stages of life that everyone is expected to follow are usually go to school, graduate, get a job, get married, have kids, buy a house, and so on. Each of these milestones are often expected to be realized by a certain age, and we often do not accommodate for the messiness of life and also the uniqueness of each individual. Because for some, this happens sooner than expected. For others, this happens during the right age group that people want you to have achieved certain things. For others, this happens much later on in life, and for others, it doesn't happen at all because perhaps you're not interested in having kids or you're not interested in getting married. I think what I got from the blurb of this is that the author takes a humorous tone to addressing these themes, and I'm curious to see how she does that, and I feel like this will be a fun one to read, but also something that is informative. The Hunger Games book series. When the movies were at their peak, I was a core fan. Hunger Games and Divergent were this for me. I loved them. And back then I didn't know there were books, both for Hunger Games and Divergent. But now that I do, I need to read the series. I haven't even read one book of the Hunger Games, and I can't believe it. I can't believe I'm saying that. But yeah, I have not read even one book of the Hunger Games series. And I know Sunrise on the Reaping has been one of the most anticipated books this year. I mean, I've only seen like every bookish person talking about it. So if only because of FOMO, I need to read them, but also just I loved the movies and I loved the stories, so I can only imagine how much better the books are. Next is the author who brought me back into the bookish world as an adult and turned me into a booktuber, and that is Vuong. He is releasing a book this year called The Emperor of Gladness. Now, the first book that I read from him is On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous, and oh my god, it's a masterpiece. It's really a masterpiece, and I don't think I've ever encountered anything like it. Or wait, I have in Open Water by, can't remember the name of the author, but that kind of writing style, it blows my mind. It's out of this world. It's so beautiful, it's so lyrical, it's so poetic, and so he is another author that I'm ready to read anything that he writes, in addition to R F Kuang and Fredrick Backman. Okay, I may be sounding like a broken horn at this point, but if you just want to have fun, if you just want to have a good time, if you want to be taken into this fantasy world that's just so cozy and magical and beautiful, Sangu Mandanna is the author. She wrote The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches, and that book, it's a comfort book, a kind of book that you pick up if you just want cozy, happy vibes. And she's coming out with another book called A Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping, and I think it's an extension of the first book, but I don't know, I'm not sure. Either way, I'm still gonna pick it up, I'm still gonna read it. I did a reading vlog. I did a video where I was recommending cozy fantasy that I had read at that time, And I remember that was such a happy time because I enjoyed so many of the books that I was recommending. And those vibes, I'm ready to go back to those vibes anytime. Cozy fantasy is just a genre that I think I will always love. And I'm always looking for a new cozy fantasy to read. So if you have any book recommendations that are cozy fantasy, feel free to leave them on the comment section. The next book is a confirmation that 2025 is the year that keeps on giving, because R F Kuang is coming out with a new book called Katabasis. She is one of my favorite authors, and that's only based on me reading one book of hers. That's how interesting and good it was. So I've seen people comparing Katabasis to Piranesi. Piranesi is a book that's already been published. It's been out there for quite a while. I think it's one of the books that is popular on booktok. Definitely popular on booktube, and with good reason. It's just a very unique and phenomenal story. So for it to be compared to that, I'm already excited. But just the name R F Kuang alone was enough to leave me interested, and I already knew I was gonna read the book. Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry. First of all, is she not the queen of romance? Because all her books of late are just everywhere. This title, first of all, is so catchy. Like, it just pulls me in immediately, even if I didn't know who Emily Henry was. It reminds me of totally random, they're not related in any way, but this reminds me of Beautiful World, Where Are You by Sally Rooney. I read that book. I did not enjoy that book, but the title alone was enough to catch my attention. I hope Great Big Beautiful World will be worth it, and as I make this video right now, I think the book is already out, so that's exciting. Next is Oathbound, which is the third book in the Legend Bond series. I have not read the first one or the second one, but they have been on my TBR for the longest time, just because this is a really popular series. When I first read the synopsis, it reminded me of the Shadowhunter series, not because they are similar in any way, but the synopsis basically tells you this is a series where we're following a character who discovers a new world of magic. And that just reminded me of Clarissa in Shadowhunters and how she discovered the whole Shadowhunter world. Say You'll Remember Me by Abby Jimenez. This is her latest release, and I think last year I read Just for the Summer, which I fell in love with. She knows how to strike a balance between fluffy romance and romance that has a bit of depth and feels like it's grounded in a bit of reality. I have heard rumors that this also contains some insta-love themes, which I feel like I will end up slowly hating if most of her books do this. I like for there to be like emotional intimacy and a slow build-up into the romance, but if it's all insta love, I don't know, it doesn't feel like it wasn't worthwhile. I don't know how I'll feel about this. I like Abby Jimenez books, the ones I've read so far, and based on that I feel like I will like this, but the insta love aspect worries me. Still, it's on my TBR. Depend by Ali Hazelwood. I've read a couple of her books, and in the moment I have so much fun. I literally can't put the book down. I immediately want to know how everything is gonna unfold, and it's always a fun ride reading her books, but afterwards I always feel empty for most of them. I think the one that I read that I really loved was The Love Hypothesis, but after that the rest were meh. They were meant for me because, I don't know, she has a way of writing that is just so freaking addictive, and in the moment you really cannot pull your eyes away from the story, from the book. But then for me personally, afterwards I feel like perhaps I wasted my time reading this story, because what did I really gain from it? Nothing. Anyway, yeah, I've said it before, I do have a love-hate relationship with Ali Hazelwood, and I don't know, I'm not gonna give up yet on her books. So Deep End is gonna be on my TBR. We All Live Here by Jojo Moyes. Jojo Moyes is also the author of Me Before You, and I think that's her most popular book. I might be wrong, don't quote me on that, but yeah, I do think that's her most popular book. I've watched the movie, but I haven't read the book, and the movie was just so timeless and beautiful. And a book that I've read from her is Someone Else's Shoes, which was also 5 stars, straight 5 stars. I feel like romantic love is always focused on in the world of storytelling in general. So the reason I loved Someone Else's Shoes is because it focuses on the love between friends, and books that highlight different kinds of love are books that I always want to read, and books that I feel like there need to be more of, because the human experience is so wide. It's not only focused on romantic love. And yeah, I do love books that try to explore multiple aspects of the love that we can have as humans. For those reasons, that I've read one of her books and it was just absolutely phenomenal. And one of her book to movie adaptation was also really great. I think Jojo is a author that has a tiny piece of my heart. I feel like she writes unique stories that are wonderful to read. Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Sun by V.A. Schwab. Now, I've only read one other book from this author, and that is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. That was one chunky book. I want to say it was 600 pages, but just the thought of that makes it feel a bit dramatic. So maybe it was 400 pages, I'm not sure. I just remember it was very long, but it was entertaining. It got repetitive and slow at certain points, but I still liked it. Because of that, I am open and curious to see what else the Ishab has published, and I think this year she is releasing this book. All I know about this story is that it's a fantasy book with vampires, and it also has elements of horror. I don't typically read horror, but I don't know. I'm open to picking it up. If it's too creepy and weird, I'll probably DNF, because horror is not my genre. But if not, yay, vampires. Reading about vampires sounds exciting. The Original Daughter by Jemima. This focuses on a sibling relationship, and we're following these two sisters as they come into adulthood, and they're trying to utilize all the things that their parents provided for them in order to build a future for themselves. And both of them struggle or try to find a balance between staying true to who they are while also honoring familial ties and the expectations that are placed upon them in terms of the kind of lives they are expected to lead. Like I said before, I love books that focus on different kinds of love that we can have as humans, and I think this one focuses on sibling dynamics, so curious to pick this one up too. Next is a book being published by a YouTuber that I follow called Janani. I think her YouTube channel is one of the things that inspired me to start my own booktube channel, and through her publishing imprint, she's releasing this book called Dust Settles North by Dina El-Ganaida. Now, she has given a synopsis of this book multiple times, and each time I found it to be interesting. But right now, at the top of my head, no matter how much I try to think about it, I cannot remember what the book was about. I know it features two siblings. One decides to stay in Egypt, I think, and the other decides to stay in America, I think. And the two siblings will also experience a kind of loss. This could be me connecting this to a story that is entirely different, but I think that's the synopsis of this book. But anyway, when she gives the synopsis, the book sounds very interesting and something you just want to pick up. So, of course, it goes with my TBR because one, the book itself sounds very interesting, and two, she is one of my favorite booktubers. Matriarch by Tina Knowles. Now, I had no idea Miss Tina Knowles was writing any kind of book until I think I came across this by accident on Goodreads. And I was like, wow, she is actually writing a book. I am a fan of Beyonce, and the little I was seeing of her mom as well, she seems like a really cool person. And I'm always so curious about these Mamoje moms in Hollywood that manage their kids and help them reach insane levels of success. So Momager moms like Kris Jenner, Tina Knowles, Christina's mom, I can't remember her name. They did a reality show and she seemed so nice. Just basically all these famous Momager moms that have helped their kids in terms of building really incredible careers. So this one is out of sheer curiosity. I want to know what Miss Tina has to say. How to Love Better by Young Pueblo. I have no idea if I'm saying the second name, even the first one properly, but anyway, but we move. This is again a book that explores the many forms of love that we can have as humans. For example, family, friends, and intimate relationships. Ever since I became an adult, I found a new appreciation for the authentic and healthy relationships that I have in my life that have lasted for the longest time. I think when you're young, you think it's so easy to form new friendships or new relationships of any kind. And then when you become an adult, you realize, wait a minute, this doesn't happen as naturally as it did when I was a kid. With that in mind, I decided to add this self-help book to the books I want to read this year. And I hope I'll end up liking it. I started realizing that a lot of self-help books take 300 or 400 pages to say something that could have been said in one sentence, and I hope that will not be the case for this book. The Tiny Things Are Heavier by Esther. This is a story about choosing between yourself or your family. Our main character relocates to the US to study, but she does this right after her brother attempted suicide. Now she feels very guilty about leaving her brother when he's really in a bad place mentally, but she does so anyway. In the US, she struggles with feelings of loneliness, feelings of otherness, and the feelings of being a foreigner and in a place where you feel like you don't necessarily automatically belong. That's all I know so far about this book, and it all sounds very interesting to me. Next is A Song of Legends Lost. This is a fantasy book, and we are transported into a world that has been surrounded by war and chaos for a long time. We have the people of the Nine Lands who were ruled by the Scathed for a long time. That is until their servants, known as Greyblood, decide to rebel and fight, and they end up slaughtering all of the Scathed. Thousands of years later, the Greybloods start facing opposition from warriors of noble blood who summon their ancestors to fight in battle with them. I think that's what I read of the synopsis so far. And what intrigued me is that I think this is African fantasy. And growing up, I've fallen in love with a lot of fantasy that is Western. For example, the Harry Potter series is one of my favorite books and movies, and that's Western fantasy. So now I'm curious to know what African fantasy has to offer, and I think this book is gonna be a nice little adventure to go on and see what the story is about. The Wanderers is another book which is African literature. I think this follows our main character who lives in South Africa with her mom. She lost touch of her dad a long time ago, but suddenly her mom dies and she finds herself all alone. And I think so far she knows that the dad is in Tanzania. So she embarks on a journey to Tanzania to reconnect with her long lost father, but unfortunately she finds that he passed away. Instead, she meets her dad's widow, and the widow shares the dad's I think there were diaries, and through that she gets to learn about the dad that she never met. I think when I read the synopsis, it left me feeling like this is one of those stories that has something worthwhile to say about life. And it's a story that will touch your heart, maybe break your heart, but ultimately teach you something meaningful about life. Dream Count by Chimamanda. This is, I think, the only book on this list that I have actually read and finished. I feel like ever since I finished reading this, I have been battling with my true feelings, because on one hand, it's Chimamanda, so how on earth am I not gonna like it? But on the other hand, if I truly just sit down and listen to myself, I know I didn't necessarily like the book. I don't think the book is terrible. It was just in the middle for me. I am on the fence about this book, but I'll go into detail when I do a book review video. Next is Blackwood's Blue Sky, and this is something that I picked solely because of one detail. And the detail is that this is a Beauty and the Beast retelling. It's about a mother and her child taking refuge with a recluse. And people around her keep warning her about this guy, but I think she doesn't listen. Oh, and we're left with 2 books before we conclude the 25. So next is a book called Theft. This year, one of my goals is to read books by authors who have won prizes. And this author has won a Nobel Prize for, I think, a previous book that he wrote. So once I discovered that he's releasing a book this year, it fell right into my goal. This, I believe, is a coming-of-age story where we follow new adults as they try to build a life for themselves. And the last book is The Watkins of African Folklore. Now this one, I'm gonna be honest, is just here because I needed 25 books for this video to make sense. But I am also very curious. As I've mentioned, African literature is something that I rarely read, and I want to change that. And this just sounded like it would be right up my alley. Thank you for watching, and I hope you found a book that you'd be curious to pick up this year. And if not, stay tuned for more bookish content.